Leader Scalise, thank you so much for taking the time today.
Welcome.
Thank you. So in recent weeks, as I'm sure you've seen, political violence has been talk of the town, talk of the country, really. We'd seen one after the other instances of really egregious violent speech, and in some cases, unfortunately, actual violence transpire. And you know that better than anybody. So could you remind our audience, maybe walk us through what happened on June 14th, 2017?
Yeah, we're just practicing for the congressional baseball game, which has been a great tradition for decades, where Republicans play the Democrats in a game at the Major League Ballpark, Washington Nationals, and we had over 28,000 people this year, so it's become a big event, raised a lot of money for charity, and it was the day before the game, and we're just having the final practice at about 6:30 to 7 in the morning, and all of a sudden I heard this noise, and it sounded to me like a tractor backfiring.
I hope that guy's okay.
And it was a gunshot, obviously, but the next thing I know, boom, I'm hit, and I don't really know what's going on. I didn't see the shooter. I go down to the ground. I start crawling away from the noise of the gunshot, and then ultimately, after about 20 feet, everything gave out. And look, I should not have made it through the day. God was on that ball field, and there were miracles that were performed. But it turned out it was a left-wing nut who was motivated to go kill every Republican. He just wanted to do that. And again, we've seen this over and over again, unfortunately, where people just feel like they might have disagreements with people politically and they want to then go kill other people. It's insanity, but unfortunately it's become too prevalent in our society. And I've been very vocal against the things that trigger people, so to speak, to go commit violence, because it is certain things that it seems like is trying to motivate and drive these people to go kill other people just because they disagree with their political views.
Yeah, and as jarring as an experience as I'm sure that was, it's, as you pointed out, it's not an isolated incident. Obviously, most recently, we saw a very shocking event take place in September where we saw Charlie Kirk get assassinated in a very public fashion. Somebody tried to assassinate the president last summer.
Twice.
And who knows how many people have ambitions of assassinating him still. We saw a lot of this language take place at the No Kings protests. You have people essentially dehumanizing Republicans, people who are on your side of the aisle, who think differently than them, calling them fascists, likening them to Hitler. And to point out, it's not just the activists that say this. It's some of the upper echelon of the Democratic Party. We have notoriously, most recently, we have the Democratic candidate for Attorney General in Virginia, Jay Jones. We have these text messages that came out. And yet people try to paint this as a both sides issue. Do you feel that this is a both sides issue?
No. And look, wherever it comes from, if somebody's advocating for or committing violence, we should all call it out. Doesn't matter where it's coming from. But it just seems like more and more we're seeing it come from the left. And as you pointed out some of the things, the words that we're seeing that are motivating people to go and try to kill people are when they call people Nazi. And you saw that even at the, we call it the Hate America, the No Kings rally, where somebody had a sign that said, kill all the Nazis. And, they just think if they tag you a Nazi, then that makes it okay to kill you. And that is telling certain people. It's like a dog whistle to say, go kill that person. And it's just what they say about their political opponents. It's insanity. And it needs to stop, and it needs to be called out. It needs to be called out by both sides, especially when you see people trying to take it up and go kill people based on that call to action.
And so what's your reaction as somebody who survived a politically motivated attack, to see a lot of people, not just your leftist neighbor, calling people Nazis as if that somehow gives you license to go out and assassinate somebody, but also people like Jay Jones or people in the media, very high-profile individuals whose words influence a lot of people and reach a lot of people. What's your reaction when you yourself survived something like that and then you see people just recklessly throwing that language around? What kind of message does that send?
It's alarming. It's disturbing because I know firsthand just what can happen when people say certain things. And, we all respect our First Amendment rights and free speech, but you can't yell fire in a movie theater. If you know that something you say is going to cause somebody, whether they're deranged or whatever it may be, if it's going to cause somebody else to try to go kill another human being, you should not say that. You should, there's 100 other things you can do to try to get your message across. But if you're saying something that might lead to somebody trying to go kill another human being, you shouldn't do it. And we should all call it out. And when you have a candidate for office who's advocating for the murder of his political rival and their family, their young kids, the voters have a role to play here too. Maybe he has a right to say it, but do you really want to elect that person as a law enforcement officer in your state? And should other elected officials be accepting and condoning and endorsing that, or should they denounce it, which I did? Everybody should denounce it, and yet some won't for political reasons. I think it's a gut check for people's integrity. If you're willing to accept a call to violence because you're more worried about a political party advancing than you are worried about civility in this country, that's a real big concern for alarm.
Yeah, and you mentioned you can't yell fire in a crowded theater, but apparently it's all right to privately fantasize about murdering your political opponents, so much so that even some of your colleagues across the aisle will not condemn Jay Jones. And just to remind the audience, some of the texts verbatim that he sent to an acquaintance who, even in those text messages, seemed disturbed by what he was saying. Quote, "Only when people feel pain personally do they move on policy." Quote, "I mean, do I think Todd and Jennifer are evil and that they are breeding little fascists?" Yes, again, this term's
There's that word.
fascists, evil. Yeah. Quote, "If those guys die before me, I will go piss on their graves." Quote, "3 people, 2 bullets. Gilbert, Hitler, and Pol Pot. Gilbert gets 2 bullets to the head." Now, Gilbert, of course, is Jay Jones. He's a political, he's the former Speaker of the Virginia House of Delegates. He's a Republican, and he was, a political opponent. But I can't imagine using words like this to describe someone I ideologically disagree with. So yeah, just your thoughts on that.
That's a person that needs mental help. It's not a person that needs to be the Attorney General of a state, the chief law enforcement officer of a state. I mean, it's very alarming and concerning, and it's a repetitive pattern that he's had and that others have had. Again, you see some of those same trigger words being used. It wasn't just one isolated incident, and there's a lot of talented people you can find to run for office. Even people that I might disagree with philosophically, but have the integrity and the moral clarity to be an elected leader. Shouldn't we have a higher standard for people that we encourage to run for office? And again, we might disagree philosophically, but don't you want to have a higher standard for that person that is going to represent your political views? And do you want somebody that has that lack of moral clarity to be the person you vote for? Again, voters have a role in this.
Yeah, voters absolutely do have a role in this. And so that gets to my last question. Voters, of course, we can select who we support, but broader picture here, it's not unique necessarily to elected officials. We've seen this extend to even civilians like Charlie Kirk. What's the solution here? How do we approach an issue like this that seems to be increasingly one that we need to encounter?
I really think it's got to come to a point where certain things that people say about other people are just deemed unacceptable. And it's just something that we as a society won't tolerate. There's certain words that used to be said about other people that are discriminatory, that are disgraceful, that are no longer allowed and accepted in our society. And some of those other trigger words, calling your opponent a Nazi just because you disagree with them, just because that means that might cause somebody to want to go kill your political opponent, and that, and yet you still do it. We deserve better.
We certainly do deserve better. Leader Scalise, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it.